Hi, my name is Vikram Gupta, and welcome to PreSales Collective's Journey to PreSales. We will be listening to fascinating stories of SCs that made their journey into solutions engineering as a career. Our goal is to inspire you, because if they can do it, so can you.
Welcome to this episode of the Journey to PreSales, brought to you by the PreSales Collective. I'm Steve Bullington, Senior Manager of Solution Engineering Talent Development at Salesforce. And my guest for this episode is Sharath Rao, a Senior Solution Engineer with Akamai. Hello, Sharath. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Steve. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So let's start with the standard big question. How did you find your way to a career in pre-sales?
Sure. Very, very good question, right? So it is very interesting how I got into pre-sales. In my 10 plus years of IT experience, right from the start of my career, I was always fascinated about technology and engineering. As a developer, I worked in IT services teams for a couple of years, then worked in product engineering teams, but never really had any interest or exposure to sales. Nor did I know that something like pre-sales existed. I never knew the broad differences between sales and pre-sales as well. Since I had an assumption that, or I would say an unknown internal bias I had was that I could never do sales or anything related to sales like pre-sales. I thought I would not be interested and be terrible at it, right? Because one of my very wrong assumptions was salespeople don't know much. They just talk, they just sell. Their entire investment is on how they attract and talk to people and, coax them into buying something. But trust me, I was very wrong. In Akamai, I worked with really knowledgeable and smart salespeople who are not just good in talking or selling, but really good at industry knowledge. They know the verticals they work in, they know their customers, they know their styles really well, depending on which region they work in. I understood it takes a lot to be a salesperson and be part of the sales team, given the pressure, and I have a huge respect for them. But when I first heard about the role pre-sales in Akamai, which also happens to be a combined role of pre-sales and technical solutioning, I got very interested in that role. And starting to dig deep by talking to people on what pre-sales is, how their day looks like, what they do, and I got very interested. I also love pre-sales because it's a lot technical, it's a lot of sales, it's a lot of industry knowledge, it's a lot of travel and benefits. What else do you need in life?
And I'm ready for travel, so bring that back as soon as possible. So if you were to sit down with a colleague that wanted to get into pre-sales and was coming, out of a programming background, much like yourself, what are some of the things that they could do to prepare for a career in pre-sales coming from another role?
Absolutely. It's a very good question because I was clueless before I came into pre-sales and I was always wondering what should be my interview prep like, right? So, and what should I learn in order to be into pre-sales a year from now? I think one of the most important things to start doing is reading up, gaining more and more industry knowledge, technical knowledge, field knowledge, vertical knowledge, whichever vertical or the industry that you're working in. The point is to not go deep like 30 levels on every topic, but at least go level 5 on every topic and increase the spectrum of knowledge, make it wide by reading not just about your vertical, but also about all the related topics and verticals. I suggest don't go behind perfectionism and knowing everything to the fullest, right? So you don't need to be so perfect. You just need to know these topics good enough to have a very good, important conversation with a customer, with a stakeholder, and to be a really good trusted advisor.
Yeah, I totally agree. Are there any specific resources that are your go-to that you always lean on to expand that breadth of knowledge that you have?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things is my best friend Google is always there. So whenever I hear a new keyword, I usually Google for it first. Then that takes me to another article, which takes me to another article, which takes me to a white paper, which takes me to a blog, which takes me to an expert. Then I speak to that expert. I make him or her my mentor. I contact them. I get the knowledge from people, articles, resources, and whatnot. And I'm totally hungry at all times to gain the knowledge. So I think that's one of the sources.
Google is our best friend, that's for sure. So now this same person has they've taken the step, they've done the preparation. Now they're in the job and they're working in the pre-sales environment. What do you think are kind of the key attributes that a professional needs to demonstrate to really be a successful pre-sales contributor?
I have learned a lot of things, of course, but the top three I would say is number one is high flexibility and the capability to adapt really well to any given situation, to a given region, customer, vertical, topic, a meeting. It doesn't matter. We have to be adaptable, flexible at all times. You need not have a fixed mindset, right? So you cannot be rigid. You need to have a yes and mindset. You need to adapt because whenever you're pushed out of your comfort zone, which most often you get, you cannot struggle there, right? So you have to move on. You have to get up, be flexible, pull up your socks and move on. You cannot afford to be rigid or strict. You need to be really agile, I would say, to adapt and to the changing situations because the industry out there changes, the customer requirement changes. It is super fast, but yet it's important to be calm. The second point is being a very good team player, right? Coupled with great communication skills. You should be able to work well with both internal and external teams. Internally, you may have to work with the salespersons, the post-sales teams, the implementation guys, the support teams, product teams. So you should really know how to work with people and make things happen and deliver wonderful results as a team. Externally, you have to be good in influencing and working with the customer teams and influencing without authority and by just being assertive. I think this is the second one. And lastly, I would say being a constant learner, right? So since pre-sales, it involves work with customers on a day-to-day basis. The technology, the tools, the industry moves at a really fast pace. Right. So we need to keep up. You need to ensure that when your customer talks to you about something new in the industry, you should know something, if not everything about it. Right. So it's important to be there up.
I love that phrase you used around influencing without authority, because the reality of it is you don't have authority over your customers, and realistically, you don't have authority over your sales team. So you really have to be that person who can influence them without the job title. So that's a great philosophy. I really appreciate that. So last question, when you zoom back and you look at, pre-sales as a career, how has it impacted you personally, both professionally and in your personal life? Absolutely.
Very good question. So when I talk about influencing without authority, I just thought about how I deal with my wife and family. So definitely a lot to take away professionally and into my personal life. I would say choosing pre-sales is one of the best decisions of my life. It gave me exposure to several different roles and verticals and teams. From pre-sales, since we get to know the industry, we see the field closely and we work with the field, we tend to get really good knowledge from the field, from our customers, from the industry where we work. So first, we can directly become a very good product manager, since people having field and industry knowledge, according to me, is a must for a product manager. So I think that is one direction I would say, that we can take. Second direction is about knowing and leading teams and managing services teams, or being a people manager, right? Being pre-sales, you know exactly what your downstream teams need to do to bring in a deal, to make a project successful, to make your customer happy. So you, as a people manager or a services manager, or say an engineering manager also, you will be able to empathize better and lead the post-sales teams and your teams well, since you exactly know what your team needs to do to make a customer and sales team successful.
That's great, and we'll make sure your wife doesn't see this, so she doesn't know how she was manipulated into buying from you. So.
And I think the last thing is that you can get into a domain or product specialist role, I would say, being in pre-sales, since your knowledge spectrum is pretty wide and you can choose which topic or field you want to get deeper into based on your interests and your goals.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite parts, is I can either go deep in product, or I can go deep in vertical, or I can stay a generalist and work with a whole bunch of people. So that's, I think, a real power of the pre-sales profession. So, Sharath, thank you for sharing your journey with us today and your insights, and we very much appreciate it. And thank you for continuing to contribute to the PreSales Collective.
Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to share my views.